So I've spent the last day really going into the vampiric powers and testing out every single one of them. As you can see, I've unlocked all but one, and I have really actually enjoyed this significantly more than the Malignant Hearts. They are similar to that. However, there are a few in here that are just absolutely game changing for a multitude of classes, and of course some that are specifically really good on some classes, and I want to talk about a lot of those today. Now, there are a ton of different ways to get potent blood, but if you're looking to unlock a lot of these, you could just get potent blood, spend the potent blood, and then unlock them. That's what you're doing with your potent blood immediately. And I'd recommend unlocking basically all of them just so you can test them out yourself. But after that, there's also a few of these that you actually have to finish the storyline for. And I would definitely recommend that you do finish the storyline because they're really powerful. The ones that you do unlock as you get through the storyline are exceptionally good, particularly Moonrise here, as well as Metamorphosis? So Metamorphosis has been really strong, as well as a few others, but you should definitely finish off the storyline here because it will give you an extreme buff to your overall power and build. Now, the first one I want to showcase here is going to be Hemomancy. This one I wasn't actually super convinced about because, well, the attack's dealing extra damage based on my maximum life. That's like really mediocre. It's like 1100 damage on an AoE, right? Okay, that's not really a big deal, only every 4 seconds. But then I saw the healing and I was like, okay, now we got something going. How big is the radius? How big is this AoE? And I want to go ahead and dive in and just kind of show you. I'm going to try to find a bigger group of enemies here. This is perfect. We'll just get hit by a couple of these enemies here, and then I'll go ahead and just basic and watch at the bottom right of the screen. Check that out. You're able to actually hit all of those characters. Look at that wasp up in the top left corner here. If we stand like roughly around right here, you could see we're actually hitting. So you could basically apply this to every single character on your screen, and you could see the healing, right? I'll basic and check out that healing on my life globe. Of course, I'm just standing in place, don't even have any of my powers activated or anything. But the more enemies you have, the better it gets. And I will have to say, this is one of the biggest issues with the melee rogue specs, was that you're too squishy. You missed out on your siphoning strikes that you had before because it's so mediocre now. Well, this is kind of like a siphoning strikes. It is extremely effective, and I've absolutely loved it. This applies to basically every build as well because the AoE is screen wide. I was a little worried when I read that because I thought it was going to be kind of melee range perhaps, or half a screen wide, but it is not. It is exceptionally good. So the Hemomancy is going to work on basically any build that's looking for a little bit of extra healing. And of course, if you do stack maximum life, this actually does a decent chunk of damage, which is pretty cool. Of course, we have the Undying power. This one, well, isn't really that crazy. It is basically like a weenie version of the Hemomancy. You're not going to be healing as much because you're not casting as many skills oftentimes. Of course, classes that are able to spam can get more value out of the Undying, which is fantastic, but that's a really solid one. Prey on the Weak here, giving you increased damage to vulnerable enemies, is good. Even though vulnerable damage is not as big of a powerhouse as it was before, it is still quite useful just to get you more damage, but also giving you the option to actually apply vulnerable through a vampiric power. Now, a lot of questions have been kind of, I guess, shown up because of vampiric curse. What is this? Well, as far as I've learned, the only way to apply vampiric curse is this accursed touch power. This is the one you earn from the blood harvest, and the way this works is this is basically a power you should probably run in most of your builds because it's going to give you that option to apply the vampiric curse, and then you'll be able to store souls that die, that are affected by your vampiric curse, and then unleash those, dealing a ton of additional damage, right? And then it also allows you to use these other vampiric powers that work off the vampiric curse. Like, for example, which one is it? There is one here. Oh man, I cannot remember where it was. It's the one that gives you extra damage over time. I don't remember. There you go. The flowing veins here. increased damage over time to moving enemies or enemies that are applied by the Vampiric Curse. Or as you can see here with the Prey on the Weak, this means that enemies are just vulnerable when you apply Vampiric Curse. So essentially what this power does for you is it gives you like the Blast Trapper's aspect for every single class, because you're able to apply the Vampiric Curse on a lucky hit. That's really good. Really, really powerful, actually. And I would definitely recommend checking this out. And this is how you get the Vampiric Curse rolling. There's also a couple other ones that I've been really, really impressed with, including Moonrise and Metamorphosis here, which has been absolutely amazing. And let me just go ahead and remove a couple here. Of course, you do need the specific packs to run, and I haven't been able to kind of get all the perfect packs or anything because I just change out my gear all the time. But what you'll notice here is when you use your dash here or your evade, you're going to get that unstoppable. Now, this is an exceptional one as well. Not every class is going to want this necessarily, right? But the classes like the Rogue I found to be very useful on, and especially like the Necromancer, right? Because if you get CC'd, you're not going to be able to dash and actually break the CC. How absurd is that? That's one of the biggest issues for a lot of classes, to be honest. And even with a class like the Rogue, which has the Shadow Step available to them, and potentially like the Shadow Clone that can give you a little bit more unstoppable, I found this to be an exceptionally useful power to give me another form of unstoppable. And if you look, because it's an evade, for the Rogue at least, you can run things like, Rapid Gambits to go ahead and decrease the evade cooldown, which basically allows you to have permanent unstoppable. This is really, really strong. So I definitely recommend you checking out the Metamorphosis, as well as I said, Moonrise. Extra attack speed across the board has been really, really good. Of course, there's a ton more, like Ravenous here, giving you just extra attack speed equal to your movement speed total, which is really, really strong. There are so many different ones, but I'll say the biggest ones are definitely going to be Hemomancy, the Moonrise power, Metamorphosis, and then after that, I'd say this is kind of like a step down. Well, I guess not necessarily. Prey on the Weak here is exceptionally good. You have Ravenous, and then lastly, you have the Accursed Touch. I would say these are probably the 6 most generally good ones, right? Like Moonrise, you just have to hit an enemy with a basic skill. Boom, you're going to get attack speed. Perfect. Every single class could use attack speed. Boom, Metamorphosis. Most classes, if you don't have a consistent form of unstoppable, this gives you another form of unstoppable. Prey on the Weak. Guess what? You get vulnerable damage and the guaranteed vulnerable application if you're running it with a Cursed Touch. Of course, Ravenous, giving you that extra attack speed once again. And then Hemomancy. I mean, what class doesn't want some extra additional passive healing? Insane value. I'll do a full dive on the specific Rogue ones with my Rogue builds, of course, and I'll dive more into this, but this is something you should immediately be farming. I talked about Blood Harvests just the other day, and a lot of you really, really kind of echoed my sentiment, but getting these Vampiric Powers up and running, not only unlocking them, but also upgrading them and actually improving the values is huge, because any Vampiric Power that you see with a blue number there, a blue percentage oftentimes, that is what is going to get improved. So if you're trying to level up, let's say the Metamorphosis, you can get increased unstoppable duration. If you're trying to get additional vulnerable damage, you just level up Prey on the Weak, right? These are huge, and you're going to need to spend a ton of potent blood because you can't target farm the ones, right? You're going to have to randomly kind of improve them as you go along. So you're going to need a lot. And that means that you better get farming on those blood harvests, because it's going to be an excellent way to improve your overall character strength. So let me know how season 2 has been treating you all, and let me know how Vampiric Powers have been. They have been absolutely insane, and I definitely recommend you guys take a double look at them, because they are not like Malignant Hearts. Like, of course, some of the Malignant Hearts were fantastic, don't get me wrong, like Automatic Corpse Explosion, the Barber, of course, but to me, these are honestly a lot more interesting for the most part, maybe with the exception of the Auto Corpse Explosion, and they're in general more powerful, which to me is just an improved Malignant Heart system. But let me know what you think, and I'll see you all for the next one.